Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Duval Dive. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game of Fans First Sports Network. And listen, I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time with hype. I did write an article on why we should expect a better 2025 from Trevor Lawrence. Make sure you check that out, Fans First Sports Network, blah, blah, blah. But I know a dude who's been working entirely harder than that, not just on the Duval Dive YouTube channel, but also with Big Cat Country with Rookie Camp and OTAs. Travis D. Holmes. You've been moving. You've been traveling. It's been a fantastic thing. It's the inspiration for a whole new generation. See, I'm teasing already, and people don't even know. So, I mean, this is a thing we do. But before I get coached by Travis D. Holmes to keep it tight because we have a guest, maybe I should just bring him in. Listen, this is a guy who needs very, very little introduction when it comes to capturing things Duval and Jaguar football, and probably in a place where he's been more excited than anyone has been amongst the Duval devout in a long time. I speak, of course, to Generation Jaguars own Jordan DeLugo. Welcome in, Jordan. How you doing, man?
Thank you so much for the awesome introduction there.
I was trying to keep it tight. How awesome could it be?
Yeah. Maybe a little hyperbolic, but I love it. I'm here for it. I'm happy to come in and talk some Jags football with y'all, no doubt about it.
Well, hey, Jordan, first you shouldn't know. Before you came into the green room, he was already like, man, I wish I would have been able to introduce him like he was a WWE guy. Jordan, it was up here.
You were this close to having me say your name and then you appear, and then Duval would believe in DeLugo. I believe in DeLugo. It would have been a whole thing, but Travis said no. I'm just kidding.
Travis is the fun sucker over here, huh?
Listen, I didn't know if a Joe Henry person or not. I don't even watch wrestling. I just can't get the stupid song out of my head. I'll be honest. So.
Yeah, I'm not a big wrestling guy either, but with Duval being very wrestling adjacent with AEW, I try to pay a little more attention, but it's just not one of those things I grew up with. So I'm kind of lost on some of the. I know a lot of the big guys, right?
Sure.
From growing up in the 90s and 2000s, but I don't know all the beef and the rivalries and all that, but I do know a lot about the Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's the point here. That's why we're here. When we're not worried about you dyeing your beard blonde in all its majesty, we are here having you analyze another dude with a whole lot of blonde that's famous for it. Boom! How's that for a segue? Listen, Jordan, I got to tell you, and I don't know, you. By the way, thank you. You have actually, thrown us a little love on the socials. So you may have seen this, you may not have, but. I even as a non-card carrying member of the Duval Devout, I am a 49ers fan. I am just a fellow Trent Baalke sufferer. That is all we have in common. And it's enough. Misery does love that company, I suppose. But speaking of all that, see, here's a reason he's tying in the 49ers, folks. Recently, Brock Purdy signed his contract. I think, what is it? $265 million, 5 years with $181 million guaranteed, the part everybody seems to be leaving out in this whole scenario. And I remember this time, quite literally last year-ish, where everybody was trying to tell me how bad Trevor Lawrence's signing was. And that contract was the wrong move and this, that, and all of the other things. Whereas I, Travis, our friend of the show, Jamal St. Cyr, went on our own sermons. Sir, I have to ask you, Jordan, with Brock Purdy signing the way he has, regardless of not how you feel about whether the Niners should have done it, I talk about that. That's a separate show. But do you feel like that kind of justifies what the Jags did? As much as we're loath to give Trent Baalke's front office credit, does this kind of make Trevor Lawrence's contract look smarter?
I don't honestly think it does. I don't think of it in those terms, right? They're two completely unrelated situations, in my opinion. Obviously, they're both quarterbacks in the NFL, right? But to me, Brock Purdy is deserving of his contract, and Trevor Lawrence is deserving of his contract as well. So it's not one of those things that I find super divisive. I know that you could certainly look at Trevor Lawrence and say, well, he's a lot more talented. than Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy is the right guy in San Francisco right now, and he's the best quarterback they've had there under Kyle Shanahan, I think by a fairly wide margin. And he's got some playmaking, some gamer, some leadership. I think that he can deliver accurate footballs. But so to me, it's like good for him. Also, moving into 2025, this is a new contract cycle for quarterbacks, right? And so for him to actually be taking less than market, slightly less than market, right?
Right.
I think it's a good deal for both sides. I honestly do. And I don't think he's like a top 10 quarterback. And obviously he's getting paid top 10 quarterback money, but he is a top 10 quarterback in that system. And I think Trevor Lawrence, with Liam Cohen and company coming to town, is going to be able to once again kind of show people where he belongs. And yeah, like would I, in a vacuum, would I rather have Trevor Lawrence on his number than Brock Purdy on his number? 100%. But we don't operate in a vacuum, right? Like you have Brock Purdy playing for the 49ers, you have Trevor Lawrence playing for the Jaguars, so it's two different situations. But yeah, I don't think there's any reason to dunk on the Jaguars for that contract that they gave Trevor, and I don't think there's any reason to be critical of the 49ers either.
You know, and it's funny, the most criticism, and I say criticism within air quotes, you know, obviously, and I this is a good opportunity to accidentally cross-promote, but I'm on a group with the Black and Gold Banneret, some of my fellow coverers of UCF football, basketball, and various other things. A Giants fan on there tried to tell me that not worrying so much about that contract was copium. After this time 2 years ago, he was trying to convince me that Danny Dimes was the guy they should have kept instead of Saquon Barkley. So what does he know? But I can't get past the gap in guaranteed money versus contract value. It's nearly $100 million in difference for Brock Purdy. I don't think he's going to play that out. In Trevor's case, what I see is a lot more show of playability in that particular piece. I mean, is it safe to say that his biggest problem, Trevor Lawrence's biggest problem, has been staying healthy? And now that we've seen that solved from a front office that's done more than for Trevor Lawrence in the offensive line than the previous front office that promised things, you know, do you feel like that kind of just inherently increases that value for Lawrence too, that they've addressed that?
You know, I'm not super high on the offensive line moves that they made this offseason. I think that I still think it's up in the air. Like,
oh, of course. Okay.
The previous regime did make investments on the offensive line. They just didn't work out the way everybody hoped. What I am more sold on than the actual personnel they brought in is the coaching and the scheme that they're probably going to be able to get out there on the field and perform better, even if they're like in a vacuum. Is Robert Hainsey more talented than Mitch Morse?
We don't know that yet. That's a fair question. I
don't think he is.
Okay.
He's younger.
I think it's possible. I think within the new scheme, it's possible. Not to mention if we're talking about 2024 Mitch Morse. Right. I mean, Morris was not a bad offensive lineman by any stretch of the imagination, but he was around that average mark. Like, I don't think I'm stretching the imagination saying that. So,
do we think Robert Hainsey is above average?
Well, that's the question.
Fit's important
what Robert Hainsey do you believe in? Do you believe that Robert Hainsey is going to be the Hainsey that he was under Dave Canellis, or do you believe Robert Hainsey is going to be the Hainsey that we saw for one game in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Like, it's such a small. It's De'Ami Brown type of sample size, unfortunately. So I
think De'Ami Brown's small sample size is much more impressive overall.
That I'll agree with 100%. And I'll put it this way. Here's the concept I'll float to you. And I mentioned this the other day on the Duval Dive. I think to evaluate on the strength of Hainsey, I'm with you of the presumed, and we have to say presumed because we really don't know what the hell is going on. What is there? 5 new bodies in that offensive line room. You know, that's a lot of flux. 6. Thank you.
Yeah, 6 with Monheim. Yeah.
Right. I keep forgetting they drafted 2. Say, listen, I know you have that epic cup. Keep it away from the microphone, Travis. But people who are listening to the pod won't get that joke. It's unfortunate. But what I will say is I feel like there's been enough moves around that. By the way, I love how we were talking quarterbacks and now it's an offensive lineman discussion. Let me show you my
Always goes back to
credentials.
the OL.
Let me show you my
Yep.
credentials, Jordan, from my Aaron Evans original from my playing days, just so you know.
Love it.
But I feel like the reason why Hainsey works is kind of that element of being in the aggregate with what this offensive line could be. And you make the very stable point where we've referred to you as a fan many times. Unfortunately, you keep making intelligent points that are less fanatic. They're actual analysis. I know. But with all that in mind, I feel like there's kind of a building it in the aggregate situation where Hainsey is but one piece to a revamp that's been necessary for a while. Would you agree with that concept?
You know, I don't know. I think that the coaching has need to be revamped. Certainly. I think the personnel hasn't gotten the job done. I think a lot of it's on coaching. I really do. And so I think for Robert Hainsey and for Patrick McCary and for Wyatt Milam or Ezra Cleveland to really perform, and even Anton Harrison in the run game, for these guys to perform the way Jaguars fans want them to, it's going to be on coaching. And obviously, the players have to take on that coaching and be willing to be coached and bust their butts, right? But you've got to be better than Doug Peterson and this coaching staff was the last couple of years. So I honestly don't think that they're a more talented group up front. I don't. They're younger. They're tougher, maybe hungrier, but I don't think that, like, just sitting here and being honest with you, I don't think Patrick McCary is a better pass protector than Brandon Scherf.
Okay.
I don't.
But do you think he's a better run blocker than Brandon Scherf?
Yeah.
That's where the conversation gets dicey.
Yeah, and the thing too is, like, it's hard to really judge what those guys did the last couple of years because I think the run schemes were so bad, so poorly coached.
Okay. Well, and let me run this past you because this is not me disagreeing. This is me posing the question just to see where you have stoked my curiosity, and you have forced me tonight, sir, to earn the name student of the game here because I have to ask you a question. You're lecturing, and I wish to learn something. That's what this question is going to be, and it is: how creative can you be in a run scheme when dudes can't handle the run blocking? That's kind of where I get stuck. Oh,
is it the chicken or the egg?
That's it.
I didn't expect to be told I was right. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jordan.
You saw Mitch Morse perform at a higher level in 2023 in the run game in Buffalo than you did last year. I think every year that Brandon Scherf was in Washington, he performed at a higher level in the run game than he did in Jacksonville. You know, that's kind of how I look at it. I don't think that it's exclusive. I think that both of those guys did get older, twilight of their careers. You know, Mitch Morse retires. I don't think Brandon Scherf's on a football team right now. So I think that there's a little bit of the, regression as you get older in terms of that physicality and that strength and all that stuff. But I think both of those guys were better before they got here in the run game.
Okay. I think I can agree with that. I think I can get down with that logic also. That's been my weird my weird landing point with this Jaguars offensive line has always been the fact that I told Kyle in previous pods, hey man, I have a personal preference that I'm looking for people movers.
Oh, see, this is on the center. Only the center.
And we have never we rarely bring in people movers. They may be great athletic guys who are good in pass blocking, but when you're talking run blocking, when it's time to get nasty, when it's time to get gritty, these are guys who will shield you, who will move you, who will turn you, but they're not guys who are going to blow you off the ball and going to dominate you at the point of attack. That's kind of my problem.
And I do think they got better in that regard. I do. They're going to be more physical up front.
Is this why you like Limbu so much in my mocks? Is that why that is? I'm just asking.
Limbo. Oh man, So that's been that's the reason I'm like, all right, cool. Maybe you could be correct in the whole Brandon Scherf, conversation, versus Brandon Scherf versus McCary, or Patrick Hainsey, Robert Hainsey versus Mitch Morris, or something along those lines. I actually will agree with you that it's quite possible that you could be correct in the fact that one of them might be just the previous guy might be better in pass blocking. But if they're just way more efficient in run blocking because they have guys who are just a little bit better at moving guys, maybe that difference makes all the difference, if you know what I mean. Like that's why I'm hoping to land on this.
And I know that they feel those guys are play through the whistle guys, and that's what they really want up front. And that can absolutely make a difference. So I'm not discrediting that at all. And I think the coaching will make a difference. I think that overall fans will like this group more than they liked the last group. I just don't necessarily think that they're that much more talented. And I do think there's going to be situations if they get into big games in late December and January where that interior not going to get it done. Yeah.
No, I got you. So at the end of all of that, yeah, we're landing in the same spot, I believe, at least. That yes, you may need to get more talented, but the overall makeup of the whole could potentially be better, or in just scheming, in the coaching, in the ability to play better, just because these are guys who may be a little bit more efficient in the run game versus having the other guys who may have actually legitimately been just better athletes or been better in the passing game, and it still could work out. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of college teams who are very successful with 3-star athletes, and they can beat up on a 5-star team just because they just play better together. They're just better in the scheme, etc. So,
well, moreover, I have to add this part too. At this point, they've upgraded the receiver core to such an extent that there's also a I don't want to say virtual impossibility, but early on, there's going to be less stuffing in the box just because they're that scared of the lottery ticket. That matters. So,
So that's an interesting one, because I don't think we've talked about that one, and I love the fact that we have Jordan on to talk about it. So
yeah, he's already given us a butt ton of like different breadcrumbs. This is why I'm not. There's been little debate from me, Jordan, simply because you're like, well, but what about Father Time? I'm like, what about him? And anyways, go ahead, Travis. You were about to ask.
But this wasn't even on the list of questions, but I gotta ask. I have a assumption that most teams just probably aren't going to start off early in the season, like loading the box against the Jaguars. They're going to play 2 high safeties and just, be scared of Travis Hunter and scared of BTJ because, college and hype and all of these things. But what say you? Do you believe there's a realistic possibility that teams could potentially just be like, all right, no, I need to see concept in action before I actually give you this 2 high safety look. All right, I'm going to load the box early on and make you show us that Travis Hunter, you are that guy, and just kind of shade coverage to Brian Thomas.
And by the way, attack the surgically repaired quarterback. I think that's on the board with it too. I think that's implied with box stuffing. But yeah, go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
Yeah, I think most smart defensive coordinators are gonna see what Brian Thomas Jr. did last year, understand what Travis Hunter and De'Ami Brown can bring. I don't think they're loading the box. That's my belief. I think teams are going to want to say, if you're going to beat me, you're going to have to run the ball on me and be efficient that way. We're going to try to take away what you do best, and you're going to have to prove you can get it done that way.
Okay. I mean, I'm here for it. It's just looking at that Tampa Bay Buccaneers team in 2024 and how efficient they were on the ground. They weren't explosive. They were just efficient. They were a lot like they Kansas City Chiefs.
Efficient through the air too.
Boom.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean,
but
Baker Mayfield had
like
40-something touchdown passes, right? Like, dang.
And they were also going against a lot of cover too. I just thought it was funny because they were like, I'm looking at that run game, and I'm like, dude, they were religiously getting 3 to 4 yards, a lot like Kansas City Chiefs. They just weren't explosive, but they were religiously getting that 3 to 4 yard range. And I'm just like, all right, cool. If the Jacksonville Jaguars were forced to do that against facing a lot of cover 2 defense, 2 high safety defenses, then would they be able to, or would they be happy to? Well, I mean, if Liam Cohen's showing us anything, he's happy taking that 3-4 yards and just kind of going down the field. All right, cool. So if I'm a smart defensive coordinator, I'm like, dude, I can't give them this 3-4 yards every time playing too high because he's shown us he's just fine taking that. You know what I mean? So
I think it's going to be a difficult situation for defenses. Honestly, I do.
Would you be that comfortable?
Because not only that, you have so much speed on this offense now. The speed is everywhere. And you're also going to have, this is an interesting way to look at it too. I think you're going to have a lot of multiple tight end sets. Is that going to force the defense's hand from a personnel standpoint? Right? Like, are you going to have bigger personnel on the field at times because there's multiple tight ends out there? They signed 3 tight ends this offseason that are all blocking tight ends. Right. They have Brenton Strange, who's physical, but also a good receiver. That's going to be an interesting element to it as well. So I think that I don't know how teams will respond to that, but you would think you would have to have some heavier personnel against that. Otherwise, they're just going to run the ball down your throat.
No, I'm here for it.
So it's tough. I think that Liam Cohen is going to put these teams in a bind with the personnel he has, from Trevor to Brian Thomas Jr. to Travis Hunter, and then all the other speed ancillary guys they have. Travis Etienne still incredibly fast. De'Ami Brown very fast. Bashal Tutin very fast. Tank Bigsby can get it going too, like speed-wise when he has a little bit of a runway. It's a situation that I would be, not envious to be a defensive coordinator coaching against Liam Cohen.
Okay. Well, and that's what you want if you're a card-carrying member of the Duval Devout. I can't front on any of the above with that. We'll just have to have Jordan back sometime. But Jordan DeLugo, Generation Jaguars, tell the world where you can be found, sir. Give them the socials, all that stuff.
Yeah, you can just follow me on Twitter at Jordan DeLugo. YouTube, GenJag, at GenJag for Jaguars coverage. If you want more draft stuff, you can follow Rogue Football on YouTube or subscribe to Rogue Football on YouTube. That's where all the non-Jaguars NFL draft stuff is, over at Rogue Football.
Okay. I learned something else. Of the many things I learned tonight, over and above your draft knowledge, Rogue Football is a thing. And by the way, if you want an ASMR experience by way of voice when you're listening to Jaguar analysis, make sure you include Jordan DeLugo here in your experience. There you go. Travis D. Holmes, tell the world, my friend.
Hey, man, I can be found on all the socials. Travis D. Holmes, Blue Sky X, Instagram. Follow the Duval Dive on TikTok. Like and subscribe us on YouTube. If you're listening to us right now, please just take a quick second. I promise you, it's nothing for you, but it's helpful to us. Rate and review us. Don't give us 4 stars. Give us 5. Come on, baby. Don't be a hater. But no, Duval Dive, like and subscribe. Travis D. Home on all the socials, and most importantly, BigCatCountry.com, because we're going to have you guys covered with all the Jacksonville Jaguars coverage, from the pressers to the OTAs to minicamp to training camp, all of it. What about you, sir? Where can you be found?
How are you going to give me the face you did right in front of Jordan with that keeping up with the Joneses comment, and then ask the world not to be a hater? How are you going to do that with a straight face anyway? Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Fans First Sports Network, covering your Jacksonville Jaguars as well as the Orlando Magic. Hey, the NBA draft is coming soon. When that happens, I'll be there just as much as I'm writing stuff about various things for your Jaguars. And, of course, don't forget my work with the Black and Gold Banneret, covering UCF football and basketball. The Night Shift podcast, though, in the meantime, still going absolutely crazy over all the success for the Olympic sports there for UCF. So make sure you check out the great Bryson Turner and Eric Lopez, as well as Jeff Sharon, doing that on the Night Shift podcast and YouTube channel. So for Generation Jaguars, Jordan DeLugo, for my personal champion, Big Cat Country's own Travis D. Holmes, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed.